because most people associate grief with death. And yet grief is really about the loss of anything that we are attached to. And of course, we immediately think a person that we're attached to, but we can also be attached to places, things, jobs, identities. And when that's severed, that creates the grief. It's really about the depth of attachment, not the specific attachment itself, because you may have been fired from a job and been like, oh, great, awesome, yay, I'm going to go on to the next thing because you weren't attached to that job. Me, I was completely attached to that job. So it was devastating.
Hello and welcome back, beautiful souls, and welcome to Mama What's Next. I'm your host, Melly, and today I have someone truly special joining us. Someone whose story will probably make you feel a little less alone in your own career struggles. Today you get to meet Laverne McKinnon. Laverne spent years climbing the ladder in entertainment, helping develop shows like CSI and Criminal Minds at CBS. She was the person advocating for writers and championing stories and literally changing people's careers with a single yes. But then one day, suddenly, after being promoted all the time and having a fantastic career, her boss told her she was a liability and she lost everything she thought defined her. What happens next wasn't just about finding another job. It was about discovering something most of us never really talk about: career grief. The real deep sadness that happens when we lose not just a paycheck, but our whole identity, our whole sense of belonging, our whole sense of who we are. Now, Laverne helps ambitious professionals navigate that grief. The grief of lost roles and career setbacks. As a career strategist and grief recovery specialist, she gives people tools to process what hurts so much so that they can move on and start their next chapter. This conversation is about the stuff nobody prepares you for, how losing a job can feel like losing yourself, and why intuition was probably screaming at you long before everything fell apart, and how to rebuild the trust with yourself when you feel completely lost and broken. So if you ever felt like you're grieving a career that didn't work out, a dream that died, or even just the version of yourself you thought you would become by now, this episode is definitely for you. Because sometimes we have to honor what we lost before we can step into what's next. So enjoy today's conversation with Laverne McKinnon. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Mama What's Next, a podcast for all the amazing women navigating the wonderful challenges of exploring a new version of yourself after becoming a mom. I'm your host, Melly, and together with my incredible guests, I'm here to help you explore who you are now and help guide you to your true path, one that feels authentic and fulfilling at the same time. Motherhood changes everything, yes. It's beautiful, transformative, and sometimes it pulls us away from the woman we were. Together we dive into career change stories and how to live a life that truly reflects who we are without guilt and with the courage to embrace your journey. So get yourself a coffee, steal a moment for yourself, and let's explore this next chapter of your life. I am super happy that you're here. Welcome. Hello, Laverne. I'm very excited to have you here today with Mama What's Next and to speak to you about your very exciting and interesting career journey. And you've been a senior executive for a very long time. You had a very successful career. How did you find your way into this arena? Like, what triggered the interest to go into that? And maybe just share a little bit more about your journey and so that people can get to know you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to chat with you. I so enjoy your podcast and the show, and I learned so much from it. And I I grew up watching a lot of television and there were like no restrictions on how much TV I could watch when I was a kid. And my older sister also taught me how to read before I even went to school. So I grew up loving story and being enamored with entertainment. So I had this dream to be in the entertainment industry, but I knew nothing about it. And essentially, I had a bunch of informational interviews when I was in college. I majored in radio, TV, film. I wanted to be an actor, but my father said, absolutely not. I'm not going to pay all this money for you to be an actor. So I wound up majoring in radio, TV, film because I thought it was the same thing as theater, but in front of the camera instead of on stage, which is just a signal of how painfully naive I was. I grew up in a little suburb outside of Chicago, and I actually come from a lower income family, and we just didn't know things. I'm the first person in my family that went to college. And so after doing informational interviews, basically what I took away from them were I could either move to New York or I could move to Los Angeles to start a career in the entertainment industry. And so I did this very deep strategic analysis of it's cold in New York, it's warm in LA, and I chose the warm weather.
That could be me too.
It's like, my goodness, the decisions that are made, like, these data points. And I basically started at the bottom. The interesting thing about the entertainment industry is you could win a Pulitzer Prize, but if you're looking to work in the entertainment industry, everyone has to start at the bottom. And even though I had 4 years of writing and producing educational films, I had won a bunch of awards. When I moved to LA, I had to start as an assistant. And it was when I started working as an assistant that I discovered that there was a job. It's basically a creative executive, a development executive, where I read material, scripts, books, and I give feedback. And I was like, oh my gosh, someone could actually pay me to do this job, to enjoy material and then just talk to writers about it and help them reach their vision. I was like, that's exciting. So I was like, that's what I want to do. And I had an amazing trajectory. I eventually landed at CBS, the broadcast network, and I started there in children's programming. And every 18 to 24 months, I was promoted, and I went from children's programming to primetime programming, which was basically going from a little league team to playing on a professional team. It was a big leap. And I became a member of the team that helped take the network from last place to first place by developing shows like the CSI franchise, Criminal Minds. And as a result of that, I was promoted to becoming head of the drama development department that was responsible for all of the 1-hour programming on the network. And it was extraordinary. And then one day, my boss came to me and told me I was a liability, and I lost my job. And it was a real surprise for me. I'd always thought of corporate America as being safe, secure, stable. As long as I worked hard and I was loyal, then I thought that I would be rewarded for that. And so that was a real significant moment in time, because it was also 9 months after I'd adopted my eldest daughter. And my father died at this right around the same time as well. So it was a huge identity crisis for me, because I so identified with the job that I had. And I was also, to be completely transparent, I was really struggling as a new mom. That was a role that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I really relied even more on my job as a place where it's like, oh, I do know what I'm doing in my job, to give me some sense of safety. And so it was a really difficult moment in time.
You said they basically said you became a liability based on the salary you were working on, basically at that time, because you were a senior executive at this point in time, yeah? And yeah, was that the main reason?
It was not completely clear to me what was meant by that. It was all very, very murky. I knew that my boss and I were having tension in our relationship, but I thought that it was normal tension. that it's a high stakes, high stress job. And once we got past our busy season, I thought things would just like settle down and we'd fall back into our normal rhythm because we'd worked together for several years. And I really prided myself on being able to read her, anticipate her needs, deliver her needs before she could even, get them out of her mouth. And so yeah, I don't fully have clarity on what that meant.
Which makes the situation even harder, right? Because not just you being thrown something like this, but you also, obviously there was something that was energetically already misaligned, I guess. And I don't know, like sometimes maybe it depends also on the level that you're working. I don't know if she was just one level up. Sometimes it's the power dynamics that may play into situations like this, that she might have felt threatened by you or at some point in the career, potentially, depending on in what sort of relation you stand with each other, right?
Yeah, I don't have the sense that she was threatened by me, but I do feel like it, and this is, with hindsight and, like over a decade later, I can start to see things a little differently, is that like, obviously every corporation, every company, every organization has its culture. And I think I really thrived in that culture for a long time. And I essentially grew up professionally there. And I began to have more confidence in my decision-making abilities, my voice, like my vision. And so I vocalized that more, and I had more and more independent thought. And independent thought was not something that was valued by the corporation. It was a very, like, there's one general who was not my boss. It was her boss, but one general, and then everyone else are soldiers. And I think my independent thought, even though I would say things behind closed doors, I don't think it was appreciated. So I was almost like a rebellious teenager. And ultimately, in the big picture, I feel like the universe tough loving me because I didn't really belong on the corporate side. It's like in my heart, in my spirit, I'm really an entrepreneur, but being an entrepreneur was horribly frightening to me. It's like, how am I going to have medical insurance? Like, how am I going to have a 401k? It's like, where's my salary going to be coming from? And so that was really, really scary.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you what was so frightening about it. And because clearly you already knew in your heart at this point that, and I think that happens to people often in these kinds of situations, you knew in your heart that something wasn't quite the right fit, but you stayed anyway. But you also couldn't stop yourself to bring forward the real, what you were thinking, what you were feeling in meetings and situations, and your opinion, because you must have already felt that, yes, it's actually the soldier that which often in corporates, right? Some cultures, there are corporate cultures where it's not like this, but you got to search, you got to try and find them. Most of the times it's the straight line that they prefer, because it's easier to manage, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I can trace back the big mistakes in my life to when I didn't pay attention to my intuition, or my intuition was lit up and I just ignored it. I'm so curious. Have you ever not listened to your intuition? I mean, you seem like you're like really connected to your body, to your spirit. Have you ever had that experience?
Nowadays I am. I've been consciously working towards listening to the intuition, more and more and more, because there's been so many times in my life when I had these insights all the time. They're like little hints. You get them just like little tick. And every time I ignored it, whenever that was, and if it's just putting a cup onto the table, that then 10 minutes later was the cup on the floor, because I just did not listen to that little hint that you get in that moment. And I really connected with that inner voice. I have to also say that there's been very traumatic things that happened to get me to that point, where things have happened in my personal life that made me kind of like, ooh, that was so bad, because I ignored that inner voice. it also rescued me. It did rescue me in the end, but it was also situations that, got me to a point where I really thought to myself, why did I not listen? And at the end showed me that when you do listen to that voice, when it comes through, can make a world of difference between having something amazing happen and ending in the most horrible situation.
Yes.
Because, and I think our busyness in our lives, the busyness, the running around, the noise, it drowns out that noise. So we really have to make a conscious effort to listen to that, really consciously taking space for ourselves, but also have these day-to-day moments, which is, that's really where the work was for me, like having day-to-day moments where you have these little insights and I just react. I don't question it anymore.
Oh, that's so amazing that you've been able to get to that place. I'm actively trying to listen more to my intuition. I have a friend who recently shared with me that his heart rate was like at 144, like that was his resting heart rate, which is like almost like double what it's supposed to be. And he had gone in for like a regular procedure, and they found out, they're like, oh my God, like your heart, this is really bad. Like immediately you have to go to the emergency room. And they paddled him to like reset his heart so they could have a normal rhythm. And I've been thinking about that a lot, because I feel like it's almost like a powerful metaphor of how we can just be going through our daily lives and we're not listening to our intuition, and it's putting us into jeopardy, but we're just not paying attention. And that was my friend. Like he was in jeopardy, but he wasn't paying attention to, like, he was like sometimes a little bit out of breath. He felt a little weak, but he was like, it's all fine. I can continue to power through. And then I feel like these traumatic events that happen in our lives, like me being fired, the things that happen to you in your personal life, they're almost like those paddles that go, we have to reset you.
That's a very good explanation. It's like a reset. I think that's what happened. And sometimes they have to shake you so much that they just shake you to your core, in whatever way. And with you too, because clearly the universe had given you information. It was there, feeding you, giving you these little hints and insights, and you knew that. Like that's the thing, like we do in our hearts, we feel it, we know it, and yet you stayed. But obviously in your case, the way I understand you now, it's also something that you really loved doing.
Oh my gosh, I did. I loved my job so much because it was an opportunity to advocate for people. My purpose in life is to help others across their finish line. And while I wasn't fully cognizant of it in that moment, I was still doing it. Like I didn't have the words for it, but just the joy it brought me to be able to meet with a writer and say, oh, this is amazing. This fits our mandate. Yes, let's do it. And it would change people's lives. Like fundamentally, to sell a project to a major broadcast network, it changes like people's career trajectory. And it brought me so much joy. And it also allowed me, because I had this identity of being competent and capable because I had been promoted so frequently. And so then when I was fired, it was like, oh, I'm no longer competent and capable. And that gutted me. And I was so tied to this external job as a source of validation for my identity. Like I was never looking inward. I was always looking outward.
Yeah. As so many people do, right? It's like you go through life and that's you identify so strongly with the company, with the brands that we work with, with what we sell, who we stand for. We always become that company, especially in a corporate setting. Like you do stand for that. And there's a different level. Also, some companies have cult-like levels as well. But what happened to you then afterwards? Like, so basically that happened, and then you just disappeared for a while, or did you instantly go, I need to keep going, I need to keep running? What happened to you after that?
It was so devastating that I wound up essentially like living in a cave, my bedroom, for almost a year. And CBS paid me out on my contract, so I had some time. And then I took the first job that was offered to me because my confidence, I had no confidence, I had no self-esteem. So when I finally was able to like poke my head out of the cave and someone said, "Oh, here's a job," I just took it. And it was, again, I was disconnected from my intuition. My intuition said, great people, awesome people, not the right thing. But I operated from a place of fear. After that, I did eventually go on to some very fancy pants, high profile jobs. The hard truth is, though, that inside, I was still broken. I was still like 1,000 pieces, because what I didn't recognize until much later was that I was grieving the loss of my CBS job. I was grieving that sense of belonging, community, my work family, my identity. And it wasn't until 10 years after CBS and having, a couple of amazing jobs where I did awesome stuff that I recognized, oh, wait, I'm still feeling this heaviness because I have professional heartbreak that's unresolved.
How did that manifest for you? Like, how did you actually come to realize that you're still, because there were some great things that you did afterwards, right? You produced some fantastic shows afterwards. And did you not feel the same level of satisfaction anymore? Or how did you realize that there was, that real grieving process still within you that you weren't aware of?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I wound up being like the first programming chief at Epix. I was the executive producer, one of the executive producers of a series on Netflix called Girl Boss. I started a production company, Kay Cannon, a highly regarded writer and director. So I was doing these amazing things. But on the inside, I felt, I'm just going to say it. It's like I hated myself. And it would manifest physically where, like, sleeping too much. Sometimes I couldn't sleep at all. My weight would fluctuate all over the place because I would overeat or I would stop eating. And I just felt like a physical heaviness, and like my ability to feel joy was significantly dampened. Now, on the outside, I'm high functioning, and I think many women are high functioning. I feel like we have an incredible ability to withstand crisis, go through traumatic events, because it's just like, I feel like it's how we are designed. I can't tell you the exact moment of how I realized that I was grieving, but I remember that when I did, and there's a term for it, bereavement experts call it disenfranchised grief. And it's any type of grief that is not openly acknowledged, socially validated, publicly mourned. So career setbacks fall into that category. There are a lot of other miscarriage, stillbirth, moving, pet loss, all different forms of disenfranchised grief, because most people associate grief with death. And yet grief is really about the loss of anything that we are attached to. And of course, we immediately think a person that we're attached to, but we can also be attached to places, things, jobs, identities. And when that's severed, that creates the grief. It's really about the depth of attachment, not the specific attachment itself, because you may have been fired from a job and been like, oh, great, awesome, yay, I'm going to go on to the next thing, because you weren't attached to that job. Me, I was completely attached to that job. So it was devastating.
Yeah. Do you feel like society is downplaying that a little bit? Like that loss of job and loss of identity in, that we have to go through this. I mean, especially nowadays, when I look at the news, when you look at social media, everything that we're hearing now is like, oh, you've got to be faster and your job's going to go anyway. And you've got to jump onto that new train now and you're going to be left behind. And it's like they're infusing so much fear into our mind at the moment, but also downplay. I feel that's just my, feel free to share what you think, but I feel they're downplaying this whole having to change the job and just being made redundant. It's like, okay, just find something new. But when you have that real strong attachment to that work and the company and especially purpose, I mean, that is heartbreaking, right?
Yes.
Because it's almost like you have to redefine your whole self. Like you have to,
yes.
right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's an overall ignorance in terms of society, and in Western culture, we put so much emphasis on jobs and careers as identifying. So it's like, I meet you for the first time. Hey, what do you do? It's like, that's so frequently, the first thing that people ask. And so it puts a lot of pressure, and the stakes become very high of, if I don't have a job, what does that say about me? Or if I have a particular type of job, what does that say about me? What if I'm in between jobs? What does that say about me? And it's also it's a way that we assess, is someone a friend or a foe? If they have a particular job, then there's almost like a Machiavellian element to, of like, oh, this person could be helpful to me. This person could be, or if they have a job that is not helpful, it's like, then all of a sudden I'm looking over your shoulder at who else can I meet at this event or at this, dinner party. So it's like baked into Western culture, and absolutely right that there's not a full sensitivity and understanding of how, when that identity, because of our jobs, is taken away from me, that there is a sense of loss. It's like, okay, get ready, move on. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. What are you thinking about doing next? It's like, I don't know. I'm still processing.
Yeah. I think they just take away that whole, just move on, get on with it. Which is oftentimes, like you're a mom as well, obviously. And it's oftentimes that whole mothers, we go through so much change as it is, right? And it's like society always expects us to just like, get on with it, children, childbirth, whatever hardship, not being able to sleep, and then you move on to the next phase, and then it's perimenopause and menopause, and just don't make a big fuss out of it,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, I so appreciate you saying that. I was complaining to a friend recently that I feel like frequently as a mother, I am not allowed to make a mistake, have a misstep, have a discovery process, and I'm human. It's like, I am going to sometimes, not say things in the most elegant way. I'm going to have a reaction as opposed to a response. It's like, wow, how human of me. And yeah, it makes me sad. It makes me sad that there's not a lot of room for, to be human when we're moms.
Hey, it's Melly from Mama What's Next, and thank you so much for listening today. Did you know we actually have a free membership at mamawhatsnext.com, where you can connect with like-minded moms and find tools to help you navigate your next steps with confidence. And if you ever feel like you need a little more personal guidance to help you figure out what comes next for you, I am here to support you one-on-one as well. I know what it's like to feel you've lost yourself, to start from zero in a new country, pivoting and transforming a career. I have done it several times alone as a single mom across 4 countries. And I would love nothing more than helping you rediscover yourself, see your potential, and build a work life that feels aligned with who you truly are. So if that sounds like something you'd love, come and visit me at mamawhatsnext.com. I'd love to hear from you. I mean, we're having more conversations about it, but I think there's so much that we need to just be also, I feel, graceful and kinder to each other as mothers. When you're going through something, when you're going through grief, when you're having like situations like with your career, because oftentimes, unfortunately, you still see how women then attack each other of not being that perfect
oh my gosh
person, perfect mother, perfect behavior or words or whatever. And you see it, especially on social media, a lot, and I think that's heartbreaking because really we have so much to carry. We should support each other in that journey,
Absolutely. And I'm guilty of it. I remember when my boss would come into the office and she would put her makeup on while we did a little morning debrief. And I remember being very judgy about that. It's she can't even be get ready for work at home. Why does she have to bring it into the office? And she was a mom and I did not have kids and I didn't get it. And then after I adopted our first daughter, I have two daughters. I suddenly was oh, stacking tasks is a very effective way to be, to go through motherhood. It's of course she could put on makeup while we're chatting in the morning and catching up. But I was I just didn't get it. I was so judgy. The other thing that I think that people don't get, which is that my choice to become a mother, yes, my choice, I very much wanted to do it. And I did have grief when I became a mother because it meant that I had to say no to other things that I loved in order to make space for motherhood. And it doesn't mean that I regret my choice, that I feel bad about my choice, but there's still loss that's involved with making a choice that we know is aligned for ourselves. And so I really wanted to be able to say that here today with you and for your listeners is if there are any moms who have made a transition, out of a professional life into motherhood and feel wait, why do I feel sad? Because this was my choice. That is absolutely normal. And then the same thing of moms who are now making choices to transition back into working and are also feeling sadness, loss, grief. It's yes, that's totally okay. You can make a choice and still have feelings of grief and know that it's still the right thing for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's we need to just be, I think, verbalizing that a little bit more. We don't talk about that enough, right? And also that it's hard, these changes, adjustments. And you obviously work with women and mothers, that have gone through that kind of change and are grieving and going through transition processes. What did you find has helped you in your own journey? When you were at this point, when you realized this is actually much deeper than I initially thought. What has helped you in your situation, and how did you start to work with people now to support them?
Yes. Well, there are three primary things that have helped me. And I work with my clients in this regard as well. But it's permission to grieve and knowing that bereavement experts have a term for this, that you and I aren't just making this up. It's career grief is real. And so that permission to grieve, I think, is a really important one. And because I think it helps with the shame component of why am I feeling so bad? And then the second thing, which I think is really important, is to recognize that there are visible losses and then there are hidden losses. So my visible loss was, okay, I didn't have my job. I didn't have my title. I didn't have my salary. I didn't have my parking space. I didn't have a place to go to. But underneath that are the hidden losses of identity, belonging, a trajectory, a sense of safety, security, identity. And so we can replace the visible losses. I got another job. I had another salary. I had another parking space. But what wasn't being addressed were those hidden losses. And so that's what really needed to be mourned. And you and I were speaking earlier about how we use those visible those visible things as a way to express the hidden losses. So my identity of being competent and capable was manifested through this high-profile job. When I lost the high-profile job, my sense of being competent and capable was affected. So and this is the third thing, through a mourning process, which involves ritual, we start to find and look inward of how do I get those hidden losses? How do I regain them through internal work as opposed to relying on external factors. So I'm a very big believer in ritual as a way to help us make those transitions. So when someone dies, there's a funeral, there's a memorial service. When there's a career setback or a major life transition, we don't typically have a ritual to acknowledge and honor that. So my ritual, which is very simple, is I had these, like, this is like 10 years after I was fired from CBS. I still had files from my time there, and I was clinging to them, thinking that at some point I can regain the things that I had there. And one day I finally opened up my filing cabinet, and it's like 4 inches of files. And I was like, what am I hanging on to? And I remember my heart was beating so fast, my palms were sweaty, and I walked down to the recycling bin and opening the bin and just very consciously saying, I'm now saying goodbye to that job. It's never coming back to me. The things that I associated with that job are not going to come back to me in that way, in that form anymore. And then dumping them into the recycling bin. And then I also remember the sensation of closing the lid of the recycling bin saying, I am complete. And then that creates space internally. And then the completion of the ritual is, okay, what do you want to fill that space with? Is it a value? Is it an energy? Is it a color? And so that I get to now make a choice, because I didn't choose to be fired. I get to make a choice of what I want to fill that space with.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds very much also, when you explain it like this, you have to also move yourself out of that victim situation of what happened to me. And you can apply that to many situations, I guess, in life, but especially also here in the career space and loss of job, like what happened to me. And then finding that strength and that belonging inside of you, that job is not you, like that doesn't make you, right? It's whatever comes from the outside. It's not us, like you're so much more. And it sounded, so I loved listening to you just then when you were explaining that with the rituals. Do you is it also quite spiritual, the ritual? So, because that's how I would imagine it, that you really go into this kind of spiritual space to create a sacred kind of environment to connect, right?
You're so spot on. And while my experience wasn't fully ritualized, the ones that I have other clients who will write a eulogy. So I work with a lot of creative people. And so, for example, one of my clients printed out a screenplay that didn't get made. And so they wrote a eulogy, and then they buried the screenplay, and they read the eulogy. And it was, there was a metaphor of pregnancy and birth, of just I created you. I could not take you to full term. I was not able to bring you into the world. And I'm so sorry that this happened. And then they said at the end of it, rest in peace. And it was just so moving. And my client had also invited some other friends as well, because that witnessing of the sadness. And it was just so beautiful, because there were also other creatives, other artists who really understood. And, going back to the societal thing, it's well, why are you sad over that project? You have this other script that is in the pipeline, or this other thing that did get made. And it's not, it doesn't diminish the fact that there's still a loss, even if there's other successes and victories around it.
Wow. That just reminds me of someone I have watched. I've been following someone from New York on social media, actually. He's a coach. He teaches about visibility, but so much more. It's about personality and really speaking your real full truth. And I love the way he tells stories. That's why I've been watching him. But he used to be a Broadway actor. And he just recently talked about that sense of identity and loss that you also just described. But in fact, he also added that sometimes, and that's applicable to corporate environments, I guess, oftentimes as well, it actually wasn't good for him. Like he had to be at such a level of performance, high performance, that he actually, it was actually taking a toll on him, so to speak. And yet he still at this point realizes that he's still grieving that. He's still attached to it because it was such a strong part of his identity, even though he's very successful now as a coach. So that's you're stepping into a new field and you're being actually quite successful, like you say, but you still, and it's that even when you feel the pain, like that is just what happens in the brain that we find ourselves in this.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the word brain, because there's a great book. It's called The Grieving Brain by Mary Frances O'Connor. And I highly, highly recommend it. And she talks about how the brain, so we're going back to this idea of like we're attached to things. And our brain keeps us safe by mapping to the thing that we're attached to. So when that thing goes away, our brain needs to be taught that that thing is no longer there. Otherwise, it keeps searching for it, which is why we feel the sense of like disorientation. We're not grounded. And so that's why ritual is so important. It teaches the brain that that thing that we were so attached to is no longer there. And then the brain can then start to find new pathways to other things that we're attached to, as opposed to constantly like reaching out for something. And it's like, oh, I can't grasp it. I can't grasp it. And then again, it's like, that's part of the emotional experience of grief, because the brain doesn't understand that that thing is no longer there and it keeps seeking it out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. How would you, when you work with your clients now and they're going through this grieving process, and you've done this kind of ritual, and you're starting to work your way into, like I say, like a new chapter, a new, forming a new identity, attaching to yourself, making that like your whole. How do you work with them? Like how do you help them to now overcome this feeling of not maybe imposter syndrome, like feeling not good enough, which is also a big factor, especially for women. We tend to have that more than men. How do you help them redefine their new self?
Yes, it's such a great question. And there are two things that I want to share. The first is that as human beings, we are meaning-making machines. We cannot tolerate not knowing. We can't tolerate uncertainty. So going back to the brain, we will create meaning, fill the blank, and it doesn't matter whether it's correct or accurate or the truth. As long as we come up with a meaning, then our brains reward us with a hormone rush. And it's like, yay. So I've been fired. Why was I fired? Oh, it's because I'm a failure. I'm a loser. And I'm like, a piece of crap. It's like, that's the meaning that I created from being fired. It didn't matter whether there was data to support that or not, but my brain goes, okay, now I get it. That's awful. So what we do is that we start to look at what was the meaning that was created by these loss events, and then we interrogate it. Is there data to support that meaning? I'd say 99 times out of 100, there is not. That we're just creating things. And so once we interrogate the meaning, and then we basically pull it apart, it's like, then we create the space, and then what did it mean that I was fired? And so, as we spoke about earlier, through my process with mourning and working, getting a lot of support, I realized I just was no longer a fit. And that was the hard truth.
Yeah.
And so we really look to redefine the meaning that's been created from the loss event.
What do you, from your experience, like working with clients now, what do you find their biggest struggle to be in that work, going through this process, moving through and redefining? Where's the hardest, the toughest work?
It comes in the front end and the back end. At the front end, why do I want to get into career grief? It's like, this is going to be really, really painful. It's like, I'd rather just keep the blinders in, suppress, negate, deny, as opposed to have to feel these feelings that are really, really awful. And it's fascinating, and I've had my own experiences with as well, is if we can tolerate it even a little bit, it starts to dissipate. And so what we resist persists. So if we, in a safe place with someone that we feel safe with, secure with, that if we can start to give ourselves permission to grieve and to permission to feel these feelings, then it dissipates. It never actually goes away. And this is the second thing that I wanted to share, which is that, and Mary Frances O'Connor talks about this as well, is that when there's a loss event, let's say I broke my arm. I'm going to give a metaphor here. I broke my arm. Mm-hmm. If I don't set it properly, I might be able to move. There's going to be discomfort. There's probably pain, but I can sort of function. Now, if I set my broken arm correctly, I'm going to regain probably full motion. It's like I can do all the things that I normally want to do. Maybe it rains and I feel a little bit of an ache in my arm, but that's it. Now, 6 months later, 50 years later, if we x-ray my arm, we will see that my arm had been broken at some point. And that's what it is with grief, that it's always going to be there. It's just the intensity of the feeling is going to dissipate if we have a mourning process and give ourselves permission to mourn. On the tail end of this, the second hardest thing that my clients typically experience is the fear of uncertainty. So I've had my mourning process, I've rewritten some meaning, but now it's like, what's next? And I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen again if I allow myself to fully hope and dream. And so that takes work around getting a little bit more comfortable with uncertainty, and also being able to look at our past and say, I have been able to navigate challenging situations. I have been able to come out through the other end. And it's, Pollyanna to think that there aren't going to be more challenges, that there are going to be more loss events. There are, but now we have more tools to be able to deal with those challenges and loss events as they come to us, so we can recover more quickly.
Is there a certain process you use to rebuild that trust?
Yeah.
What would you say?
And I've had to do this for myself. It's like I broke trust with myself. I didn't listen to my intuition. I didn't pay attention to myself. And so I'm a big believer in just teeny tiny baby steps. So even okay, we finished talking and I do have a tendency to neglect my body. And it's like, okay, I'm going to say after we're done, I'm going to go and have a bite to eat. And then I'm going to have a bite to eat. And then I'm going to acknowledge I took care of myself. I did what I said I was going to do. And that starts to rebuild trust. But where my clients falter is if they try to do something really big of okay, I'm going to write for 2 hours today. Okay, I'm going to go on Indeed and look for a job, or I'm going to go on LinkedIn and I'm going to post and I'm going to, it's that's too big. Let's do something that feels much, much smaller, because when we make it safe, we make it possible. And so we have to build safety in little tiny increments.
Yeah, I love that. That's my view as well. And you also, I feel, tend to not disappoint yourself so much, because when you set these milestones, too big, then sometimes you don't achieve them, or you go backwards, and then we tend to be harsh, and then we feel bad, and that's exactly what we don't want.
Yes. So, yeah. And then get to give ourselves a lot of grace and understand context. So let's say you and I finish our conversation, then I don't get a bite to eat. And then later I'm self-flagellating, and it's and so mad. But then if I push the pause button and I assess rather than judge, I can say, oh, wait a second. I finished our conversation and then I walked out of my office and then my daughter was there and she needed me. And so it's like, that's why I didn't have a bite to eat, is because she is my priority. And then I forgot. And so I just want to give myself some grace and compassion. And then, okay, how do I assess so that this doesn't happen again? And this is a tool that I use. I set timers for myself. And like I label the timer and I'll, say like eat breakfast. Okay, what's the next thing? It's like take a walk. Because I do get caught up and I do lose focus. And so this is something that I know about myself. So I'm creating an infrastructure and a system to help me meet my needs. And I only got there through being able to assess and putting the judgment off to the side, because judgment actually doesn't help us. Assessment does.
Yeah. That is such an amazing tip. I'm going to steal that from you too, because I'm the same. Like we tend to, and then especially when you work and you get into like different things, like you forget about yourself, right? And it happens to moms particularly. Like we forget about ourselves, and it doesn't need to be the huge, big things that we need to give back to ourselves. It doesn't need to be a whole day, but just that, what you just said, and like having a little timer just to remind yourself, to give yourself a break and to, have something to eat and focus on yourself for a moment is such a great tip. Like I actually have never done that before, so I will give that a try. Taking some time management skills away here too.
Well, it's so funny because I kept like making promises to myself, and I'd like write things down and I'd like, put them in the calendar. And I was like, why do I keep dropping the ball here? And it was like, okay, I just need another tool. It's like, I need like the ding, ding, ding going, oh, right. Yeah. It's like, look at my to-do list, look at my calendar. Oh, yeah.
But it happens to so many moms, right? I'm surrounded by moms all the time, and everybody has like a little business and they might have a job, they do different things, and then they have the kids and they have all the programs, and it's so much stuff, and they keep dropping the ball on what is important for them professionally because they put everyone always first.
Yes.
So it's just so important, because then we really disappoint ourselves. It's not the family, it's not the children, it's not the husband, it's us that are not reaching the goal that we have maybe set for ourselves,
So true.
Yeah. Laverne, like how do you work with clients, at the moment? Like, do you do one-on-one coaching? How long support is the support normally? Is it very custom depending on what the situation is the person is in, or?
Yeah. So I do one-to-one coaching, and it is a bespoke process. And where my coaching work really thrives is helping people who are in transition in the professional realm, either trying to like get on the ladder, move up the ladder, or they've been pushed off the ladder. It's like, or thinking about pivoting. The place where I in addition to the one-to-one coaching is I have a community on Substack. I love the platform. It's substack.moonshotmentor.com. That's my Substack. And paid subscribers, and I always like to be really transparent, it's $5 US a month. We do co-working sessions. I drop meditations weekly. And then I also do live workshops. So like right now I'm in the middle of a 5-part career grief workshop that's free to the subscribers. And so it's just a beautiful community. And that's really where I love to send people, because then there's also like, weekly blogs and just a lot of really great resources and tips. And the workshops are really amazing. And so it just makes it really, really accessible. So it's not like a fee on top of the membership.
Yeah. Yes. Is that where people would find you generally, like on Substack, or do you have a LinkedIn, Instagram profile, anywhere where you're more active, where they can get to know you better and your work and you as a person?
Yeah. So if people are not on Substack or not familiar with it, then I'd like to send people either to my LinkedIn, which is Laverne McKinnon, or my website, lavernemckinnon.com.
Yes. Thank you so much, Laverne. It's been so amazing talking to you and speaking to you. And I just really, it fills my heart, especially from like your spiritual experience and how you're building that, integrating that and making that like a real core of your work is, I'm a strong believer that's what it needs. We're not just like reformatting a career path, it's really so much more than that. And I feel like we really have so much we're receiving so much information. We just have to learn to listen, right?
Oh my gosh.
So,
yes. So true.
What's next for you? Like, that's something I always like to ask, at the end of the conversation, if you have any big plans, any goals coming up, anything exciting that's happening this year for you, or even if it's, an exciting travel trip or some exciting work goals that you have?
Two things for me is I've written a book proposal about career grief. And so my publishing agent will be taking that out this summer to traditional publishers. So that's a big event, which I'm excited and nervous about. And then for the second year in a row, I am taking the month of July off. And it continues to be a grand experiment. Last July, I could not rest. I was and it basically taught me like I need to learn how to do that. So I'm looking forward to the month of July as a hiatus a month. And I'm also like a little bit nervous about it as well. It really is like confronting me in terms of how I over-index on productivity and achievement. So it'll be another big growth opportunity. I can feel my whole body like tensing up as I'm talking to you about it.
Responding, like actually speaking it out loud, that you're actually trying to make that happen.
I'm like, maybe I should dial this back. Can we cut this part out?
That's, and so many people, and especially women, we try to actually create these little pockets, for ourselves. But why did you make that, such a signpost for yourself, like to take like a month off? Like, how did that happen for you? Did you just feel?
Yeah, it was, well, we have this natural break, like around like New Year's with the holidays. And I was like, I felt like I needed a break in the middle of the year as well. And I'm a research junkie, and I've been reading so much research about the importance of rest and how rest is like the key ingredient to being able to achieve one's goals. And I'm so achievement driven. And I was like, wow, I'm missing out on an important tool to be able to achieve my goals. And so I'm like, I want to master rest so I can be more effective and more efficient. And through experience, I feel like it takes me several days, if not a week, for my body and my brain to register, oh, we're taking a break. And so that's why I wanted to be a month. I felt like it's going to take me at least a week, 10 days for me to catch up to what we're doing here. And then I was like, and then I really want like this, like I want to get to a place where I feel bored and restless, and then get to the other side of that and then see what happens. I have not achieved this yet. I'm really, really curious.
It's good putting it live out there that you're aiming to do that.
I feel like there's an accountability thing here that I've just created for myself. And I'm like, yeah, I have like regret bubbling up.
Oh no. It sounds beautiful, and you're speaking so much. Like, I think so many women can really relate to that. And when you said that, I was like, whoa, that she's allowing herself to do that, because you are like, it's so true. If you're an overachiever, right, and you're so like trying to be very productive all the time, I was actually going to ask you how you like, can you always switch off straight away? Because I have so much trouble doing that, like even when I'm taking time off, I'm sitting and reading books about, different topics, coaching, brain activity, research, grit, this, that, the other. And it's not like I'm reading some novel about some story about someone. It's like, no, I'm still trying to be productive.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like secretly productive.
Subconsciously, I'm still trying to work, even pretending I'm not working.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So I'm admiring that you say like, yes, I'm doing that. And I was going to ask you, how do you actually achieve that. But that's why the 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Clunky, messy. Yeah. A lot of flailing around.
Yeah. But it's true. Like we do need that time, like we learn this all the time. Like you need to give yourself that rest, the brain, the rest, so that you can be creative again. Right. So, and you clearly need it for your work, and we all do. So
we really do. Yeah. It's, I'm having this observation of myself right now of how I'm making rest a task, a to-do item.
I didn't even think of that. But, I think so many can relate to this, because it is, for women that, driven and successful and achievers, that it's so hard for us to dial that down and just to shut it off. And in that respect, it's also easy for men, it's like they could, even when they end the day of work and they close the door and the door's closed.
Yes.
Like, show me a woman that can actually do that. Like, we really have to make conscious effort to do that. So,
great effort. Yes. Yes.
Well, Laverne, thank you so much for joining us today, for joining me and sharing so many interesting bits and pieces about your work and how you support your clients. And it's very important work, and I'm very happy to hear that you have found a new purpose in this work now. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. I truly love it. And I really appreciate this conversation. And you just have so much magic about you. And I'm like, you pulled this rest thing out of me. I feel like I've just had a little mini coaching session, because you're so beautiful at holding space and asking just, gentle and powerful questions. So thank you for this time.
Oh, likewise. I'm having, just the best time speaking to you now. And it fills my heart so much. And also connecting with you on this kind of level and being so real and so authentic. And it feeds my heart too. So thank you very much for spending time with me and with the community. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Here are the key takeaways. Here's what I want you to walk away with from my chat with Laverne today. Number 1, you get to grieve your career losses. When you lose a job you loved, you're not just losing money. You're losing your identity, your daily routine, your work friends. That hurts. And it's completely normal to feel very sad about that. Don't let anyone rush you through that. Number 2, listen to your gut. Your intuition usually knows something's wrong way before your head finally catches up with it. If you keep ignoring those little warning signs, life has a way of getting louder until you finally pay attention. Number 3, you're so much more than your job title. This one's really hard because we all do it. We introduce ourselves by what we do for work. But when that gets taken away, you're still you. The real work is figuring out who you are without all that external stuff. Number 4, create your own goodbye ritual. Our brains need help understanding when something's actually over. Laverne threw away her old work files and said goodbye out loud. Find your own way to close that chapter. Write a letter to yourself. Have a little ceremony, whatever feels right for you at the time. Number 5, rebuild trust with yourself, little by little. If you ignored your instincts and got hurt, start really small to build that trust back. Keep tiny promises to yourself first, like eating lunch or taking a break when you say you will. And do that before making any bigger commitments. Number 6, turn your inner critic into your inner detective. When something doesn't go as planned, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Instead of, why did I make this mistake? Like if you promised yourself you'd update your resume but ended up binge watching Netflix instead. Maybe you learned that you need accountability, that you need a little more discipline, or that you work better early in the morning. There's always something useful hiding in what feels like failure. Number 7, your setbacks aren't your ending. Laverne is the best example. Laverne's career didn't stop after CBS. It just went in a different direction. What feels like the worst thing can actually lead you to where you're really meant to go. So, you need to honor what you've lost. You need to feel what you need to feel and trust that you can handle whatever comes next. You've gotten through so much hard stuff by now, and you'll do it again, I know. Remember, beautiful souls, if this conversation stirred something up for you, that's your intuition talking. Listen to it. And if you know someone who needs to hear Laverne's story, share this episode with them. I'd be super grateful, and I'd be really, really happy if the stories we tell here on Mama What's Next can help someone find their real path, help someone be braver, live their dreams, listen to their inner voice, listen to their intuition, and live the life that they really came here for. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next week. Goodbye.
Stop the battle within your soul. You know it's all in your head. Being sad doesn't make you smart. It seems your heart just needs a fresh start.